First of all, we are very grateful for the support of Dr. Julie Alderton and Dr. Van Deo, who are our faculty advisors. I'd like to invite our team to say a quick hello or to briefly introduce themselves if they'd like. Yu Hang is our deputy editor.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Yu Hang. I'm in my first year of PhDs and I'm a deputy editor of this volume. And I'm joined by Jun, who is another deputy editor here. Jun.
Hi everyone, I'm a final year PhD at the Faculty of Education.
And we also have Maham, who is our research communications editor.
Hello everyone, so wonderful to see all of you here. This is Maham and I'm at the Faculty of Education. I'm studying for my MPhil in Education, Globalization and International Development. Looking forward to the session.
Thank you all. Today we'll also have the opportunity to hear from our guest speakers who have previously published in the journal. We have Dr. Rosa Darney. Last year, she finished her PhD at the Faculty of Education at Cambridge University. Now, she's joining us from the US. She was our faculty committee first president 2 years ago. Rosa, I don't know if you are there, but would you like to introduce yourself? No, not yet, I guess. We have Kevin. Oh, you are there.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Rosa Darney, and I was a student at the faculty for several years, almost 4. It's nice to see you all, and I'm happy that you're considering to submit to CERJ, to CERJ, that's what we call it. I spent a lot of my time at FIRSA. I used to be the president. Some of you know me, but yeah, I'm happy to be here and to answer any questions.
It's great to see you again, Rosa. Thank you. And we have Kevin. He's our current FIRSA president. Kevin, would you like to say hello?
Maybe he's not here yet.
Okay, we can wait later. And we have Viam Hamdan. Viam, thank you so much for joining us. I know you are busy finalizing your last revision for your PhD, so we really appreciate you being here. Also, would you like to say something for us?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Gamze. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm a 4th-year PhD student, so yeah, in the last stages now of submitting my PhD.
Thank you so much. We'd like to hear from you later in the session. Thank you so much. And in this session, we aim to give an overview of the journal, its editorial process, and what publishing with CERJ can look like. And at the end, we will have a live Q&A session in case you have questions for us and for our guest speakers. So I'll start with a brief introduction to CERJ. CERJ was founded in 2014 as a student-led journal within the Faculty of Education at the University of Cambridge. It is indexed in the Directory of Open Access Journals, meaning all articles are freely accessible for everyone. Importantly, there are no fees to publish, so authors are not charged at any stage of the process. As CERJ Volume 13, we aim to communicate educational research and publication process in ways that are both rigorous and accessible. And these goals guide what we try to do with the journal. We also see the journal as part of wider education dialogue and discourse, where ideas are not just presented, but engaged with and developed further. We want to create a space where researchers can share their work and exchange perspectives, particularly across different contexts and career stages, both within and beyond Cambridge University. Alongside this, we ensure accountability and transparency in the publishing process, making expectations and decisions as clear as possible. Finally, supporting early career researchers is important for us. It can be whether through guidance in the submission process or creating opportunities to contribute and gain experience in academic publishing. So this year we introduced a theme, education in changing times. With the theme, we are not trying to define what changing times means. Instead, we want to leave it open to different interpretations depending on your context and different perspectives. So we are inviting contributions that explore change as something complex. It might involve uncertainty, tension, and uneven impacts, but also very productive possibilities. So we do encourage authors to engage clearly with the theme, as this is one of the aspects we will consider during the desk review process. So it would be helpful if that connection comes through explicitly throughout the paper. The editorial process typically runs from submission in spring through review over the summer, concluding with publication in November, hopefully. We started paper call in March, and the deadline for the submissions is the 22nd of May. At the first stage, all submissions first go through a desk review, where we check for their overall fit with the journal and the theme. If suitable, then the paper is sent for peer review. This is a double-blind review. We will assign an anonymized version of your paper to reviewers. Reviewers provide detailed and constructive feedback, and in response to these comments over summer, authors would have a chance to revise their work. Starting from September, revised manuscripts will go through further rounds of review by the editorial board, and then a final decision is made, and you will be informed if your paper is accepted or rejected. Throughout the process, we will ensure transparency. And for updates and specific date announcements, please do have a look at our website. I've included a link as a footnote on the slides. We have the number of questions from you through the form, so I'll start by addressing a few of them briefly from the editorial side. Some of these relate to submission practices. In general, CERJ does allow both individual and co-authored submissions, and there isn't a limit on the number of manuscripts. However, each submission is considered independently, and you would expect each paper to make a distinct and meaningful contribution. For the third question, CERJ is not driven by impact factor metrics. It certainly shapes how journals are perceived within the academic community. However, it does not determine the quality or significance of any single article. Now I want to turn to our guest speakers to share their perspectives. We have some questions about the experience of publishing, particularly around methodology, publishing during a PhD or master's, and some general advice for early career researchers.
Should any of us just go ahead and share, or is Is there a specific
Um,
order?
No, we don't have. Please go ahead, Rosa. Thank you so much.
All right, I'll go one by one. So I did publish so when I published, I did mine in the 10th volume. It was a literature review, and I was just entering my data collection stage. And there wasn't any specific method for it because it was still a literature review. But I know that if you are doing a qualitative research, be very careful with doing an article that does not sound like a book chapter. A lot of first-time publishers like to do that because they're just getting their ideas sorted and putting it into paper. And a lot of the times, the first draft could sound a bit very wordy. Be very specific in journal articles, and CERJ is not different from that. They would require clarity. Clarity is very important. I also got feedback from my reviewers in the first stage, and they say this is not a book chapter, be more concise. So in my editing process between the peer review to the final version, I really had to the formatting was good, but I had to re-strategize how I communicate each of my ideas, and that was really important. And it was also a learning process for myself because I only published three times before this, and this was the first time in the UK context. So if you've never published in the UK, this is also a good opportunity to do so. Can I submit to CERJ during my PhD? Of course. Most, even in your MPhil, if you're still if you just start graduate school, we've seen, we had others who submitted who were not a PhD student, even in Cambridge, but in other universities. It's a good way to collaborate as well. People submit together with others. There are also professors, supervisors, and student submissions. So yeah, just to simply answer that, what are some do's and don'ts of publishing for early career researchers? I will invite others to add in because there's definitely so many to share. But for me personally, I would not be very careful of the layout of the instructions of the publishing because every journal have their own requirements and their guidelines. After going through submission processes and guidelines a couple times, there's just no limit on how many times you can read those guidelines. I think CERJ have its own guidelines and they're very clear about what they want. Like my only edit in terms of before submission was making sure that it was according to the guidelines margins. So even to those specificities, pay attention to them because they will help you. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, Rosa. And Liam, would you like to continue?
Yeah. Well, I think publishing is really important for anyone transitioning into academia or considering academic work more seriously. And if you don't have publications, it's really helpful to look at journals or for journals that explicitly encourage early career researchers or students like CERJ. CERJ is a good example of that kind of space. My paper actually started as a master's assignment. It was a critical review that examined barriers to higher education for Palestinians living within 1948 areas. And what I was trying to do in that paper was move beyond explanations that focus only on access or participation and instead situate education within broader historical and political context, particularly processes of dispossession or marginalization and structural inequality. So I had written several critical pieces during my master's, and I didn't want that work to just remain as something submitted for assessment. and then forgotten. A lot of effort goes into those assignments, and I felt that I had the potential to contribute to wider academic conversations. Methodologically, the paper was not based on primary empirical data, but on engaging and synthesizing existing scholarship. So a big part of the work was about how I approached the literature, what lens I used, how I interpreted it, and how I positioned my argument within wider debates. And I think that's really important for early career researchers. Even if you're not doing empirical work, your methodology still matters. So it's about how you read and connect and critically engaged with existing scholarship or research. And for me, that meant also tying together different strands of scholarship, so education, inequality, and Palestinian political context, and grounding them in lived realities. So the contribution of the paper was not new data, but a different way of framing the problem and bringing these conversations into dialogue. When I moved from assignment to publication, the main shift was about making the contribution explicit. So for me, that was also a shift from writing to an assessor to writing to an academic audience. So that means being more clear about what the paper is doing within the literature, and whether that's synthesizing or challenging assumptions maybe, or offering a different way of understanding an issue. And I think it's important to emphasize that your contribution doesn't always have to be empirical. I think I've mentioned that, but it's an important emphasis. As long as you're clear about the lens and how you're engaging with the scholarship. And CERJ is quite open to that diversity of approaches, so it made it a good fit actually for my work. In terms of the process, I found CERJ to be quite supportive. The feedback I received was constructive and more focused on strengthening the clarity of the argument and the structure, and maybe how the paper speaks to a broader educational audience, so moving from the local to the global. At the same time, I would say that rejection is part of the process and something you do have to get used to. In another instance, when I was working on a more empirical paper, I actually found it much harder to publish. And that experience made me realize that publishing is not only about the quality of the work. Sometimes it's about finding the right journal. Sometimes your work doesn't align with the journal's priorities, or they may not be open to certain approaches or politics, I would say. So it's really important to read journals carefully, look at what they publish and what kind of methodologies they support, and whether your work fits within that space. CERJ was a good match because it welcomes early career researchers and is open to critical and interdisciplinary approaches. So overall, publishing was less about producing something entirely new. It was about just recognizing the value of the work I'm doing. And sometimes as early career researchers, we don't really see that. Just clarifying the argument and making the contribution more explicit for a wider audience. So positioning is important. And I think that's something I would really encourage others to think about. And sometimes that the starting point is already there, but it just needs to be refined and shared. It needs to go out there.
Thank you so much, VM and Rosa. I think Kevin is not here.
I'm
And
here
it is-
actually.
Oh, are you there? I'm so happy.
I'm so sorry for being late. Shall I share my take on this, Gamse?
We'd like to
Hi,
hear.
hi everyone, I'm Kevin. Lin Wei Pyo, thank you, Gamse, Kimi, June and Mahal for having me. Hi, Rosa, William. It was great seeing you here. So just to talk about the paper that I published mine in volume 11. And just like William, it's actually a piece that I work on for my MPhil. So I want to do something with that paper. So it was a very supportive community search, and I reach out to the editorial board, and they're very they give me a lot of information on how I can repurpose my MPhil thesis that will be more in alignment with their objective for that particular volume. So my paper is about, it's all about understanding equity and access in higher education in Myanmar. So it's a mixed method, not in a traditional sense, because I'm doing a large scale nationally representative secondary data analysis, and I complemented that with policy analysis. So in a way, I'm a bit it's not a very common like niche. Like when I checked like past search published papers, there weren't many articles that are similar to mine, so I'm a bit nervous about it. But I think the editor in chief back then, she's doing quants, and she's like, no, we're open to all like types of like research methods, and if you have any question, reach out to us. And I agree with William in the sense that I think it's very important to know the editor in port as well, like who is actually anchoring that particular volume, because their objective, their vision change. So just knowing them helps you position, helps you also understand whether it's a right fit for you and whether you should be thinking of a different journal, right? I just do be very honest. There's again, like to answer the first question, not necessarily. I did a mixed method, and it works. So that's a good thing. Um, with the PhD thing, I think it's very important to have like an honest conversation with your supervisor or your advisor, because I remember in fact, like when I'm thinking of like submitting my MPhil thesis, my supervisor was like telling me whether because my PhD work is building upon it. So if she is like, oh, if you want to do something with your PhD, make sure that they're different, because we really need to be aware of like self-plagiarism and stuff. So that's something that I think we should add when we're in our like MPhil or PhD. It's always good to have that conversation with your supervisor, just to let them know that you're also doing that, to just keep them like posted with what you're doing. Some do's and don'ts of like publishing for early career researcher. I have to echo what Rosa said. It's always good to collaborate with your fellow fellow PhD candidates or MPhil candidates. That's always a good thing. Um, now that I reflect on it, I would say just go for it, because we really need because CERJ is actually the first paper that I published. So it's actually give me much needed confidence to actually move forward. So I would say like go for it, regardless. Don'ts would be just like try to be familiar with what the journal is all about, their intent, and also if you have question, it's always good to ask like questions when you're in doubt, instead of just making like assumption about it. So that's all I have to say. I know it's pretty brief, but then I'm open to having a longer conversation and answering more question if you have. Like, thank you, Kamsi. I think that's all for me.
Thank you so much for very valuable experiences and suggestions. And I'm sure our participants will have questions for the Q&A session later. Now I want to hand over to June about the questions specific to types of articles, and critical reviews and research synthesis, and what counts as an original contribution. Jun, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Gangji, and thanks so much for our guest speakers sharing their experience, which is fantastic. We have received quite a lot of questions regarding article types. For instance, what kind of papers may be of interest in our journal? Can I go with interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary approaches? What level of originality should I present in my paper? So I will take this opportunity to walk you through our 4 submission categories and help you better understand what we are looking for in your manuscript. So Gandhi, can you turn to the next slide? So first up, we have our full-length original research papers. This is our most common category for those presenting a complete, well-developed empirical study. You should include a clear research questions, a solid theoretical framework, and a detailed methodology. You need to demonstrate a specific contribution to our educational debate. As our guest speakers has said, we have no preference for specific methodologies or even sample sizes. Qualitative, quantitative, or mixed method research is very much welcome in our journal. We just want to see the rigor and transparency in your research. So for a strong paper, don't just tell us what you have found. We want to know why it matters and how it fits into the bigger picture that you have identified. And don't forget to mention the limitation of your study and provide some possible directions for your future colleagues to work on. And the next category, the critical reviews and synthesis. The central expectation is that it is your critical engagement with existing literature that goes beyond mere summaries of your targeted literature. Don't think what review has less value compared with empirical research. Oftentimes, reviews and synthesis can also make a lasting influence compared with empirical papers. So for this category, this can be a standalone pieces or part of an ongoing master or doctoral project in your literature review section. You should state a clear intention, whether it's a review aim, a hypothesis, or a problem statement. Don't just summarize studies one by one. Instead, you should compare perspectives, identify tensions, and show how your review advances our understanding of the field. Since we have a rather broad of readers, so please define your specialized concepts or technical terms if you have used in your review. You want someone from a different subfield of education to be able to follow your argument. The third category is research notes or commentary pieces. These are shorter articles designed for work in progress or emerging ideas. So if you are in the early stage of your project, maybe you have got some interesting initial findings, or you want to present a conceptual direction, or you run into a unique debate with regard to theories or methodologies. So this is the perfect place for you to share those early stage ideas. Well, it doesn't need to be a complete study like for the first category, the original paper. You should also provide enough background, such as research questions and theoretical perspectives, so the readers can engage with your argument. The goal here is to raise timely issues or offer new perspectives that open up questions for future discussions. Finally, we also have book reviews. This is a new category starting from this year, and we really hope to keep this in our future volumes. So please, if you have read a good book and write your reviews, do consider sending it to us. So the book in the field of education should be from a sound publisher. For example, your university press, Routledge, Wiley, etc. And this book should be published within the last 3 years. For book review, we don't just want to see a piece of chapter by chapter summary. You should situate the book within wider scholarly debates and evaluate its theoretical rigor and unique contributions, and also try to keep it professional and respectful when you write a review, but don't be afraid to be critical where it deserved. So to wrap up, these are our submission categories for volume 13, and we're really looking forward to your manuscript. Back to you, Gamze.
Thank you so much, Jun. And we have a few questions about context and some policy of our journal. So, Yuhang, would you like to answer those questions?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, we have received questions on particular contests, whether they are prioritized or favored by our journal. So firstly, basically for inequality, we of course value works on inequality, particularly when it engages critically with how like educational processes, structures, and practices shape or are shaped by inequalities. So the first part of this first question is definitely a yes. Okay, of course, your manuscript needs to be informed and well thoughtful. As long as it adheres to that, we are perfectly fine, and we welcome manuscripts working on inequality. And for the second part of the first question, whether context-specific studies, for example, from the Global South, are expected to generate broader theoretical insights. So in terms of context-specific studies, CERJ, we are not prioritizing any studies from any places in the earth over the other. So if your study is from the Global South or wherever, there is no expectation that they must generalize a universal or Western sense of insights. So again, it's back to your manuscript. You can, of course, like generate your own insights, theoretical ones, or implications, whatever. But again, that would need to be critically engaged, and we welcome any manuscripts from fields of any part of the earth. And for the second question, does the Education in Changing Times volume prioritize papers that critique specific national policy frameworks? Similarly, we are not prioritizing critiques of whatever frameworks per se. We are valuing strong engagement with contemporary or evolving context. So again, just like what Gamze mentioned, our volume is looking towards the changing context. We're not trying to define it. We encourage our authors to define and engage with it. So for example, if an analysis of a policy framework meaningfully contributes to the argument and introduces a well-developed critical lens towards your study, just an example, such work would certainly be welcomed, and we will put it towards the peer review process definitely. So basically, to summarize, whatever context you're working on, if the manuscript is well written, we will consider it. That's my part. Thanks, Gamze.
Thank you, Yuhang. Yeah, we received questions about our AI policy and ethics. So, Mom, would you like to answer those questions?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'll be briefly discussing our use of AI policy. So, while we do acknowledge that AI is currently in use a lot, and it does help us in further digging deeper when it comes to our research, it is important that you critically engage with whatever you are submitting and with whatever ideas you have in mind. So by that, I mean that you cannot simply reproduce whatever AI tools have suggested you to. It is very important that you must reflect your own thinking, your own line of thought, and definitely you must never copy paste any generated AI generated material into your own work. That is very important. So, and also in terms of data analysis, please make sure you're not putting your data in an AI engine, and it is extremely imperative, and I would like to emphasize this a lot, that you need to do your own data analysis, and which may be interview transcripts, which could be data sets, anything that is, when it comes to ethical considerations as well, that is also very important. And overall, when it comes to research integrity, um, we have to make sure that the data analysis is done solely by the authors themselves and not by an AI tool. So this is briefly our AI policy. I will be pasting some useful links for everybody to take a look at. This also includes the University of Cambridge's use of AI policy. You can take a look at it, and so that whatever you're submitting is clearly in line with our policy as well, which is basically University of Cambridge's AI policy. Gamze, would you like to turn to the next slide? Thank you. And also, just briefly about ethics. Of course, we are all researchers, but it is always important to stress highly when it comes to research ethics, since they are fundamental to ensuring that all research that is conducted is done responsibly, safely, and with integrity. Here at CERJ, we take this very seriously. So as per, again, I will be referring to University of Cambridge's ethics policy. It is vital to protect the dignity, right, safety, and well-being of all individuals involved, particularly your participants, and particularly when your research involves human participants and personal data. So at its core, ethical research is about, as we all know, respect for people. So this includes obtaining informed consent, ensuring participation is obviously voluntary, and recognizing that participants as individuals have autonomy and throughout the research process. So, and a key component of all of this is data protection and anonymity. So researchers must ensure that in your submissions, all personal data is handled anonymously. There are no identifiers in your submissions, and also all the personal data that you have is handled securely and confidentially in line with all the regulations. And this again involves storing data safely, limiting access to authorized individuals, and removing again all identifiers and information wherever possible. So, and another, again, core principle is minimizing harm. Researchers must anticipate and reduce any potential physical, psychological, and social risks, ensuring that the benefits of the research outweigh any possible harm when it comes to participants. Ethics also, we all believe that promote fairness and justice. So ensuring that it is important that we ensure that no group is unfairly burdened or excluded, and that the benefits of research are distributed equitably and equally. And finally, ethical research requires integrity and accountability, which again then boils down to the use of AI and AI related tools. So researchers must act responsibly, honestly, and transparently. So over here it is also important to mention that in your methodology section, do discuss in detail all the ethical choices and all the methodological choices that you are making. Why are you interviewing certain people? What is your sample size? Why is that your sample size? All of these things need to be discussed at length and properly, so as to make sure that your research process and methodology is as transparent as possible. So Yeah, this is briefly from my side. I will be posting a few important links that you can use while you are thinking about submitting at CERJ. So yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Maham. I think we finished received questions from you, so we can move to Q&A session. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question, or if you prefer, you can drop it in the chat box, and Maham will take it from there. Thank you.